A low tremor pulsed through the hull of the Vother's eye, subtle at first, then building like a living thing trying to shake free. Commander Elias Grant, standing rigid at the observation deck, narrowed his eyes against the polarizing lens of the viewport. Outside, the clouds thickened into a churning gray mass, layered like muscle over the Pacific Ocean. Lightning slashed in silence beyond the reinforced glass. The sky didn't just boil, it seethed. "We are experiencing minor atmospheric fluctuations," came the indifferent voice of Admiral Rexon. His scaled fingers drummed along the console with the impatience of a being who had spent decades in undisputed authority. "Adjust stabilizers. Proceed descent." "Minor." Elias snapped, turning. "That's a hyperstorm. A Category 6 spiral convergence. That formation hasn't been catalogued even by Earth's best satellites. It's not weather. It's a siege." A silence fell over the command deck. Alien officers, some chitinous, some smooth-skinned, none human, glanced up from glowing panels with mild curiosity. Only Lieutenant Marcus Shaw, human and young but sharp, showed concern. He stood beside Elias, tension evident in his jaw. Rexon didn't look at Elias when he spoke. "We've endured ion geysers on Kleizai, acid typhoons on Rogar 3, and pressure implosions near neutron stars. You expect me to fear precipitation?" "It's not the rain, sir," Elias said coldly. "It's the arrogance." The ship's sensors flickered. A low-frequency pulse rippled through the deck, too subtle for most of the crew to notice, but Elias felt it in his gut. Not noise, not turbulence, a kind of warning. "Ship integrity stable," called a voice from engineering. "But gravimetric calibration is irregular." Elias exhaled sharply, suppressing the rising chill at the base of his spine. He stepped to a secondary console and tapped in a localized satellite feed. For a moment, static. Then the visual broke through, a spiraling storm cell stretching for hundreds of miles, with an eye darker than the void of space itself. At the center, lightning coiled like veins in a beast's iris. It didn't spin like a normal storm. It recoiled. "Tell me you see that," Elias said, jabbing a finger at the display. Lieutenant Shaw leaned in, frowning. "That's not natural. There's a reverse spin in the lower hemisphere. It's pulling in magnetic interference. That's not just a storm, it's reacting to us." Admiral Rexon waved a dismissive claw. "Earth's biosphere is a chaotic relic. The Council's climatologists predicted interference. It's irrelevant. Stay the course." The hull vibrated again, longer this time. The kind of tremor that wasn't listed in diagnostics but was unmistakably real to those with a spine. Elias felt the deck tilt almost imperceptibly underfoot. He stared at Rexon, then at the counselor seated behind him, Jaro Ven, a neutral Clyde with translucent skin and soft blinking eyes. Jaro Ven studied the storm footage with what might have been the first hint of unease Elias had ever seen on that expressionless face. "Admiral," Jaro Ven said slowly, "perhaps we should consider the humans' input. Earth's atmosphere is notably eccentric." Rexon hissed in irritation. "You would let the child of an untamed planet guide a council flagship." Elias stepped forward, voice low and sharp. "I spent 15 years studying terrestrial meteorology. I've flown into hurricanes, watched mountains vanish in sudden vortexes. And you're telling me this thing out there, this thing that doesn't register on your models, is safe? That your shields, designed for solar flares and plasma discharges, can handle an Earthborn superstorm that doesn't follow any galactic pattern?" The Admiral's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. "Then let me speak plainly," Elias continued. "You don't understand this planet. And if we keep descending, you're going to lose this ship. Maybe your crew. Maybe worse." Shaw shifted beside him, checking the external shield readings. His face went pale. "Commander, external shielding just dropped 7% in 3 seconds. Elias turned. Distance to sea level. Still over 12,000 feet. But it's dropping fast. Suddenly, the ship groaned. Not just a vibration. This was a protest. The kind of sound a living thing makes when it's being crushed. Atmospheric density spike, someone shouted. Gravimetric readings erratic, external forces unpredictable. The clouds outside weren't gray anymore. They'd turned an eerie, matte black. Forked lightning stretched horizontally across the sky, unending. "Sound the abort," Elias ordered. Ascend now. Rexon's jaw clenched. You presume. But Jaroven raised a hand. No, his right. Another tremor, followed by a lurch so violent that multiple officers were thrown to the deck. Lights flickered. Gravity anchors buckled momentarily. Rexon stumbled back against the wall, his pride bruised more than his body. Engines to full, barked Elias. Pull us up. But the storm was no longer a thing they could outrun. The ship's engines howled, but external resistance climbed, as if the atmosphere itself had thickened, grown sentient, and wrapped itself around the vessel like a clenched fist. Commander, Shaw muttered, barely audible. The storm, it's tracking us. The deck lights dimmed to red. Outside, the eye of the storm loomed, closer than it should have been. In its center, something moved. Not a form, not a ship, just a suggestion. A density. A ripple in the clouds shaped like a spine. Impossible, Elias whispered. A silence spread across the deck as every eye turned to the viewport. The storm no longer looked like a storm. It looked like a predator. Jaroven's voice came soft and slow. Perhaps, Earth fights back. The ship jolted. A warning siren screamed as altitude plummeted. Brace for impact, someone shouted. Elias took a breath, hands white-knuckled on the console. They'd laughed. They'd dismissed. But now they were inside the storm, and Earth had just bared its teeth. The impact didn't kill them, but it came close. The Votha's eye struck the Pacific like a falling god, carving a thunderous trench through waves that reared up in defiance. Reinforced alloy groaned against the pressure of centuries-old currents, and the ship shuddered as though it had bones to break. Then silence, awful, tight silence, as if the ocean itself was holding its breath. Elias Grant came to with blood in his mouth and a ringing in his ears. Emergency lights bathed the control deck in crimson, casting alien shadows across motionless bodies. He pulled himself upright, hands scraping over fractured glass and slick steel, and looked for movement. A groan, human. Marcus Shaw was slumped near a console, one arm twisted beneath him. Elias staggered over, kneeling beside his lieutenant. Marcus! The younger man blinked. Still hey, feels like I fought a building. You fought a planet. Marcus managed a crooked grin before grimacing in pain. Status. Elias looked around. Unknown. But we're alive. That's more than I expected. Beyond the fractured viewport, seawater foamed over the hull. They weren't submerged, yet. The ship listed, half buried in the ocean, its engines dark. Elias tapped the internal comm. Bridge to medbay. Report. Static. He tried again. Engineering? Life support. Nothing. Just silence and the occasional whimper from injured crew. Across the bridge, Admiral Rexon lay pinned beneath a dislodged beam. His armor, once immaculate, was scorched and dented. His pride, even more so. Elias approached him with deliberate steps. You still think this planet is quaint? He asked. Rexon's eye ridges twitched. I miscalculated. You gambled with lives. Correct. And I lost. He coughed, voice rasping. Get this off me. Elias didn't move. You'll follow orders. Rexon growled low in his throat. Do what you must. It wasn't submission. But it wasn't defiance either. Elias motioned to Marcus, who limped over and helped shift the beam. With a grunt, Rexon rose, clutching his side but standing. His dignity was cracked, but intact. The ship moaned around them like a wounded animal. Elias turned to the crew. We need power. Comes. Life support. I want a survival team on rotation. Marcus, find Jaroven. The young officer nodded, disappearing down the corridor. Elias stepped outside the bridge into a dim hallway that smelled of ozone and salt. Water dripped from ceiling panels. He walked slowly, taking in the damage, sparks, shattered tiles, scorch marks. Earth had swatted them out of the sky like a fly. He found Jaroven in the observation chamber, gazing through the fractured dome at the horizon. His pale, glassy skin shimmered in the emergency lighting. You came, Jaroven said without turning. You're not surprised. I had faith. Elias raised an eyebrow. In me. In the consequences of hubris. The counselor turned. You warned us. The admiral laughed. But the storm listened. It's not just a storm, Elias said. It's something else. It responded to us. Reacted. It's not conscious, at least not in the way we think, but it adapts. It's not just violent. It's selective. Jaroven nodded slowly. It knew we didn't belong. There's a pattern in Earth's chaos. You just have to survive long enough to see it. The comm crackled to life suddenly, startling them both. Commander, Marcus's voice buzzed. Engineering found partial auxiliary. Powers returning to some sectors. We also found something unusual. Elias keyed his comm. Go ahead. There's a pulse. Not from the ship, from outside. Electromagnetic, low frequency. It's circling the hull like sonar. Elias felt a chill. Nature doesn't use sonar. Maybe not nature as we know it. He moved fast, returning to the bridge. Marcus met him halfway, bruised but alert. I ran scans on the pulse. It's not just bouncing back, it's mapping us. Like it's figuring out which system's active, what's still breathing. Elias stared at the monitor, watching the waveforms roll like ghost signals across the screen. Turn off everything unnecessary, he ordered. Shut down beacons, nav markers, distress signals, anything that pings outward. So, we're not just surviving a storm, we're being hunted by it. The crew scrambled. Lights dimmed further. Consoles went dark. The storm didn't roar anymore, it watched. Every active signal was a flare in the dark, and Elias had no intention of offering it a target. Rexon, leaning against a pillar, regarded Elias with something new, not contempt, not deference, calculation. You think this entity is alive? Elias shook his head. Not in a way we understand. But it's aware. A natural system that's reached complexity through raw, unpredictable evolution. Maybe it's always been there. Maybe Earth's atmosphere breeds these anomalies the way other planets breed predators. Jaroven folded his hands. The Council classifies Earth as a Tier 2 habitable sphere. Primitive. Irrational. But we never considered the possibility that the planet itself might be adversarial. No one ever thinks a world can fight back, Elias murmured. Until it does. Marcus stepped forward. Commander, if that pulse is searching for us, what happens when it stops? Elias didn't answer immediately. He studied the readouts. The wave was still circling, slow, deliberate, intelligent by design or instinct. He remembered flying into supercells as a younger man, the crackling hum of electrical fields right before a strike. He remembered watching clouds fold inward like lungs ready to exhale lightning. It stops, he said finally, when it knows enough to kill us efficiently. The crew was silent. Then, almost as if summoned by those words, a new tremor rippled through the deck. Not a collision. Not pressure. Footsteps. A vibration in water and steel that mimicked movement. Lumbering, powerful, circling the hull. Elias gripped the console. Something's walking out there, Marcus whispered. No, Elias replied, voice grim. Something's circling, and it knows we're trapped. The lights flickered once, then went dark. The only illumination came from the broken sky above, flashes of silver and blue crackling through clouds that no longer looked like weather but wings. The hunt had begun. Metal groaned with every swell of the ocean, the Votha's eye creaking like an ancient shipwreck clinging to relevance. Water seeped into lower decks through microfractures, and the temperature inside the vessel had begun to drop sharply. Breath plumed in the frigid air. Elias Grant stood at the center of the bridge, surrounded by flickering panels and exhausted faces, staring at the static-filled display that once showed their surroundings. Now it showed only gray distortion, static laced with rhythmic pulses. Environmental seals are weakening in Deck C through F, reported Marcus, hunched over the last functioning console. We can rear out pressure doors, but we're running on borrowed time. Elias glanced around the room. The alien officers, once confident, even dismissive, now sat with hollow expressions, waiting for someone else to make the next decision. Rexon remained at the edge of the chamber, arms folded, silently watching. He hadn't spoken since the pulses started moving in synchronized patterns, as if the storm outside had grown patient. Smarter. We need to power down everything, Elias said. Not just comms or navigation. Everything. Shut down energy signatures, drain capacitors, isolate reactor cores. That'll black us out completely, Marcus said. We'll have no heat. No comms. No shields. It's not like those are keeping us alive now. Jaro Ven entered, soaked from his inspection of the outer hull. His skin flickered faintly with bioluminescence, a stress reaction common to his kind. The storm isn't dispersing. It's orbiting us, spiraling like a noose. It's not just weather, Elias said again, voice colder than before. It's reacting to energy signatures. Every time we pulse, it adjusts. It doesn't just surround us, it learns. Shaw looked at him, brows furrowed. Are you saying we're being studied? I think we're being hunted, Elias replied. And the moment we make a wrong move, we'll stop being fascinating. We'll just be food. The words hung in the air. The term was primitive, intentionally so. These were beings from the Galactic Council, technologically superior, shielded by centuries of complacency. And now, that illusion was cracking. Rexon finally spoke. You propose we become primitive to survive. I propose we do what Earth's predators do when they are outmatched, Elias replied. We disappear. The command deck fell into activity. Orders relayed. Lights dimmed. One by one, systems went dark. The last remaining reactor was powered down manually, with Elias personally overseeing the shutdown. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was tense, absolute, as though the air itself had grown heavy in anticipation. Elias walked the halls with a portable lantern strapped to his chest, checking on crew and reinforcing bulkheads where he could. Marcus followed behind, holding a salvaged thermal reader. Power's nearly zero across all sectors, the lieutenant said. We're ghosts now. Good. Let the storm wonder where we went. I hate this, Marcus admitted. Not knowing. Not doing anything. Elias paused, his expression unreadable. Sometimes survival isn't about fighting. It's about not being noticed. They reached the viewing chamber again. Outside, the clouds still churned, but without the aggressive flashes from earlier. The storm's rage had dulled into focus. I can't believe we survived the impact, Marcus murmured. We didn't survive it, Elias said. It let us live. A sudden noise, a thud from deep below the hull. Both men froze. Another impact. Then a slow scraping sound, metal on metal, dragging along the outer frame. Marcus raised his reader. There's no movement on the scopes, but that wasn't water. Something's testing us, Elias whispered. Jaro Ven's voice came over the wrist comms, hushed but urgent. Commander, you need to come to engineering. Now. They moved quickly through narrow halls lit only by flickering lanterns. The air felt thinner, colder. Inside engineering, the Council's scientists stood clustered around an auxiliary power conduit. Something shimmered faintly near it. Residual electromagnetic bleed, said one. It shouldn't be active. It's not from us, Jaro Ven said. That's from outside. On instinct, Elias pulled the panel. Behind it, a previously inactive subbeacon was glowing. A Council emergency transponder, automatic, deep-coded, and designed to pulse a rescue signal no matter what other systems were down. Shut it off, Elias ordered. We can't, said a technician. It's shielded, built to operate post-catastrophic loss. Then destroy it. Marcus didn't hesitate. He grabbed a fusion torch and drove it into the transponder. The core flared once, then went black. For a moment, everything felt still. Then the hull shook. This wasn't a tremor. It was a strike, direct, deliberate, measured. The ship reeled with the force. Pipes burst, panels shattered. Screams echoed in the darkness. They heard that, Marcus said through gritted teeth. They were waiting for it, Elias corrected. A distant shriek of wind followed, unnatural and high-pitched, like static drag through broken glass. Rexon arrived, bruised and scowling. We must retaliate. With what? Elias shot back. Half your weapons are buried in the ocean. The others require targeting systems we can't risk activating. We cannot cower in darkness like vermin. No, Elias said, but we can move like them. He turned to Marcus. Get your team. We building a Faraday shelter inside the core chamber. Use old plating, broken systems, anything conductive. We shield ourselves. Fully. No power. No signals. Just silence. Marcus nodded. We going to hide in the belly of our own corpse. Exactly. As the team worked, Elias sat alone near the shattered viewport. Rain struck the glass in slow, deliberate patterns. He swore it wasn't random. The storm was searching. Behind him, Rexon approached. "You're a strange species, Commander. You hide when hunted. You shut off your fire when cold. You surrender the sky when it turns." Elias didn't look at him. "And we survive." Rexon was silent for a long time. Then, finally, "Perhaps that is the greatest strength." Hours passed. The makeshift Faraday shelter was finished, no bigger than a cargo container, lined with scavenged metals and wrapped in insulation. Cramped, dark, and silent. Elias, Marcus, Jaroven, and a half-dozen others packed inside, listening to the slow heartbeat of wind against steel. "We stay quiet," Elias whispered. "We breathe slow. We wait." Outside, the storm began to hum again. But it did not strike. Not yet. The shelter was so silent that even the scrape of cloth sounded like thunder. Elias sat with his back to the curved wall, knees drawn up, heartbeat slow and measured. Around him, 8 others, council and crew alike, waited in total darkness. The heat from their breath had long since been swallowed by the cold of powered-down systems. Every instinct screamed to move, to flee, to act, but he'd survived long enough to know that Earth, in moments like this, punished the impatient. A low vibration stirred the floor beneath them. Not a jolt or quake, more like the pulse of something massive, unseen, circling the wreck. The storm hadn't passed. It had become patient. That frightened Elias more than anything. "How long can we stay like this?" whispered Marcus, voice nearly inaudible. "As long as it takes," Elias murmured back. "If it thinks we've gone, it might lose interest. If it doesn't." Elias didn't answer, because the alternative was too final to articulate. Another hour passed, marked only by the increasing irregularity of those distant pulses. At times, they stopped altogether. At others, they clustered tightly, like sonar searching for prey. Elias began to suspect it was a test. If they so much as powered up a light, it would strike. Jaroven leaned toward him. "What if it's not searching for us?" His voice was calm, but laced with a strange, reverent tone. Elias frowned. "Explain. What if it already found us? What if it's waiting for confirmation?" It made sense. The way storms built and held. Not dumb, not entirely sentient, but reactive. The weather system had adapted to a level of complexity not seen on any other council world. No algorithm could predict it. No machine could define it. Elias felt the terrible realization settle in his gut. They weren't just hiding from nature. They were hiding from something nature had birthed. Something ancient. A product of chaos, not malice, but dangerous all the same. The Faraday shelter, despite its protection, was losing integrity. Condensation pooled along the floor. Metal groaned faintly as the pressure outside increased. "We won't last much longer," Marcus said. "Even hiding. Air's thinning." Elias looked down at the wrist module tucked under his coat. The emergency flare beacon. Still intact. Still shielded. It was their only way to signal for rescue, if Earth Command was even listening. But turning it on would mean broadcasting a signature powerful enough to summon more than just help. Rexon, watching silently from the corner, finally stared. "You've delayed death with silence. Commendable. But you will not avoid it forever." "I don't intend to," Elias said. "I intend to earn it." He stood slowly, bracing himself. "We're not going to outlast this thing. But we can teach it something." Jaroven blinked. "You plan to engage it?" "No, I plan to mislead it." They left the shelter with careful movements, wrapping their bodies in insulation to mimic the temperature of the dead ship. The beacon was sealed in a Faraday satchel. Marcus followed close, his breathing shallow, eyes darting constantly. Outside, the ship's corridors were a husk, hollow and flooded in shadows. The wind had returned, whispering through the broken vessel in stuttering intervals, like a creature catching its breath. In the engineering bay, Elias positioned the satchel behind a deactivated thermal regulator, burying it in coolant foam. "What now?" Marcus asked. "Now we wait for it to find the wrong signal." They made it only halfway back to the shelter when the first crack of pressure struck. It wasn't lightning, it was an atmospheric convulsion. The air itself bent, warping around the ship like glass beneath a hammer. Elias pushed Marcus into a collapsed maintenance tunnel just as a bulkhead exploded behind them. Lightning coiled through the air, silent, colorless. It wasn't random. It was surgical. From the shattered window high above, Elias saw it, not a form, not a beast, but a rising pattern in the clouds. A column, shifting and writhing, drawn by the decoy flare. The storm was descending. Back in the core, systems flickered. The energy from the beacon must have triggered a feedback loop. Not long now before the thing above realized it had been tricked. Elias turned to Marcus, urgency clear. You need to shut it down manually. Marcus hesitated. If I go in there, I won't make it out. Exactly why I'm going. Elias gripped his shoulder. You've got leadership in you. People see it. They follow it. That matters more than my survival. I'm not leaving you, Marcus said, voice low. You don't have a choice. Elias moved before the younger man could argue, breaking into a sprint down the sloped corridor. Lightning danced across the deck as he reached the core chamber. Heat and electromagnetic force pressed down like gravity. He could feel his own fillings hum. The decoy signal had done its job too well. With fingers numbed by static, Elias reached the satchel. His skin burned as he yanked it free, crushing the beacon inside with one slam against the bulkhead. Sparks died. Silence followed. For a second, he thought it had worked. Then the sky opened. A torrent of wind and vapor collapsed the ceiling above, flooding the chamber with white stormlight. Elias was thrown backward, slamming into the deck with enough force to knock the air from his lungs. He lay there, blinking against the brightness, as the storm's energy coiled into the chamber like curious tendrils. It saw him. And in that moment, Elias didn't see malice. He saw wonder. The storm didn't hate them. It simply didn't recognize restraint. It was survival without limit. And he, a human, had chosen to protect rather than provoke. Perhaps that alone was enough. The tendrils receded. The pressure dropped. Slowly, impossibly, the clouds began to unwind. Later, when the rescue team arrived from orbit, guided by the brief flare the decoy had emitted, they found the Vothas barely afloat, scorched and fractured. The survivors were clustered in the makeshift shelter. Marcus, now in command, was waiting at the airlock. They found Elias unconscious, barely alive, near the shattered core chamber. He awoke days later in an orbital medbay. Above him, through a glass dome, the Earth turned slowly, storm-free and silent. Jaroven stood nearby, watching. The Council is re-evaluating Earth's classification, the alien said. Red class. Environmentally hostile. Extremely. Elias chuckled weakly. Took them long enough. And you, Commander, Jaroven continued, are being recommended for a multi-sector commendation. Apparently, even the storm respected your sacrifice. Elias turned his gaze upward to the swirl of blue and white. It didn't respect me, he murmured. It just recognized something familiar. From orbit, Earth looked peaceful. But Elias knew better. Peace, on this world, was never guaranteed. It was earned.